My name is John Stratton. I serve as the Dean of the Cathedral Church of the Nativity, as well as one of the folks on the organizing committee for the Emergency Response Network. And it is my pleasure, my honor to welcome all of you here to this space. The cathedral is a cathedral of the Episcopal Diocese of the Susquehanna. But we also are a public space where folks gather together for events like this to talk about important issues that affect our lives, our families, our community, and our world. And so we like to consider ourselves here at Nativity as a cathedral for the wider community, for Bethlehem, as well as the Lehigh Valley. And even if you never become a member of the cathedral, we do hope that you will come to find this place as your cathedral as well. So welcome everyone. Tonight's town hall event is a non-partisan event. The Emergency Response Network does not endorse any political candidates or political parties. But that does not mean that we are neutral. During times like this, neutrality is really not an option. Times like these do not call for neutrality, but rather radical solidarity, and the Emergency Response Network unequivocally stands in solidarity with the immigrant community right here in the Lehigh Valley. In the struggle between good and evil, in the struggle between right and wrong, in the struggle between hate and love, as I said, neutrality is not an option, and at one point, each and every one of us is going to have to answer the judge when he asks the question, which side were you on? Which side were you on? And that judge might be the people, it might be history, it might be God Almighty, and as long as you are still breathing, there is a chance for you to make your decision. Which side are you going to be on? Which side are you going to be on? In fact, I think that's why we're here tonight, to hear the response to that question from folks who are running for office. I do want a few housekeeping things before I turn it over to John Irons to start us off. There are bathrooms in the hallway. There's coffee and tea in the back. There's water here. There's also a donation station that accepts credit cards, and there's a little box, old-fashioned style, that accepts money and checks. Anything that is donated tonight will go directly to the work of the Emergency Response Network to help our neighbors here in the Lehigh Valley. If you are making a checkout, make it out to the Cathedral Church of the Nativity, but we will make sure that that goes to the right place. So again, welcome to this space, and again, I hope that you will come to find this space as your cathedral. I want to introduce John Irons, who is going to be our moderator tonight. John is an elected official, as well as a member of the organizing committee for the Emergency Response Network. So, John?
Thank you. Thank you, John. So I have the pleasure of moderating this conversation tonight, really just making sure that we're keeping the time and moving things along. I'm going to start by introducing the candidates that we have here today. All of the congressional candidates who have declared for the Democratic Party, as well as Ryan McKenzie, were engaged and invited to this event tonight. Several of the candidates were not able to come. Ryan Crosswell had a pre-existing scheduling conflict on this evening. I understand that Carol Urbando-Durstein is feeling ill recently and was not able to come. And Bob Brooks was called to something to have to do with the firefighters union and his job as the president of the union statewide. So that's where he is tonight. Louis Shoup was also invited, and we expected him here today, but he has not arrived as of yet. Today we have here Lamont McClure, a former Northampton County executive. We have Mark Pinsley, who's the Lehigh County Controller. And Aiden, you're going to tell me your last name, I'm sorry. Aiden Gonzalez, who I believe was the head of the Young Democrats from Northampton County. So it is not easy to do this work. We have several elected officials. You know, Lamont and Mark are already elected. And it's not easy to do this work, so we appreciate you being here and taking on this challenge in these times of crises. I just want to review the rules that we reviewed with the candidates beforehand for what's going to happen tonight, so that you're all aware of what the plan is tonight. There will be a total of 12 questions. 3 will be from people within the ERN network who will speak to some of the work that's been going on and some of their experience that led to their involvement with the network. Candidates will be given 5 minutes to respond to each of these questions. After we finish that, there will be 9 questions that were submitted by you, audience members, and some pre-registrants. Candidates will be given 2 minutes to respond to those 9 audience questions. The questions will be asked here from the microphone. So for the pre-written questions, I will call you up in order, and then I will have a list of the 9 selected questions. I believe if you submitted a question, you were given a raffle ticket. I will call out your number to call you forward to ask the question and give you the question that you submitted to read. There's a timekeeper in the back who will alert the moderator, that's me, and the candidates at 2 minutes, 1 minute, and 30 seconds. Audience members are all given 3 cards, 1 green, 1 orange, and 1 pink. Audience members are invited to raise their cards after each candidate has provided an answer to their question. Think about them as using them instead of applause so that we can keep the night moving. Green indicates you agree with the issue or are favorable towards it. Orange indicates that you're moderate, maybe have more questions, a little divided on it. And then the pink will be a disagree or something that is, you're not quite on the same page with that. Please do not applaud for the statements. Use your card so that we can keep the night moving. The chairs here were assigned randomly. We're going to start going left to right. So Mr. McClure will have the first question here, and then we'll bounce sort of back and forth as we do this evening. At the end of the show, I will read a statement that was written by one of our other ERN organizers to kind of summarize the night and bring us all together. So thank you for being here, and let's get started. So first up, I'm going to invite Barbara, a member of Indivisible, to come up and ask and tell her story and ask her first question.
Is this on?
Yep, you're good.
Have to be close. Is this close enough? Yes. So there are a number of people that are here tonight from the Indivisible Lehigh Valley Bethlehem Immigration Group, and many are active with the Immigration Food Group, which is a group since last July that has been providing groceries to immigrant families that are afraid to leave their home because of the actions of ICE. And so we have been bringing food directly to their homes. These are people who are food insecure, afraid to go to pantries, afraid to go to grocery stores, so they can't get food for their families, and we're trying to fill that need. At present, we provide 2 weeks of groceries to these 28 families, 14 families a week, so we make a delivery every week. And we provide fresh fruit and vegetables, we provide perishables like milk and chicken and eggs and butter, and pantry items like rice and beans and onion and garlic and pasta and potatoes and blah, 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 blah. 2 weeks worth of food. So that's my story. My question is, would you publicly support programs like ours?
Again, my name is Lamont McClure. I just finished my 2nd term as county executive of Northampton County. I decided not to seek a 3rd term because of the chaos that Trump has brought to our country. And we need to fight like hell to end the chaos that Trump has brought to our country. To be specifically responsive to your question, thank you for what you do. We're in a cathedral right? Feeding your brothers and sisters is part of the command that we have from Jesus, correct? So I think what you're doing is God's work. With that being said, I want to talk a little bit about how I've come to this issue. I have not come to the issue of immigration just as I've been running for Congress. I've actually been involved in this issue for more than a decade. I served on Northampton County Council for nearly 10 years. And during that time, the federal government tried to bring a private immigration prison to the Lehigh Valley, specifically to Northampton County and to the Upper Mount Bethel Township. I fought them. It was the GEO Group. Anybody who knows anything about the GEO Group knows this is a terrible private prison company. And if you don't know anything about the GEO Group, please research them. It's a terrible private, and I fought them. I fought to keep them out of the Lehigh Valley, Northampton County, and Upper Mount Bethel Township. I voted against it, and we won. So I'm not new to this fight. So when you're talking, this question really goes to what's your heart? I think that describes my heart more than a decade ago. So when I got elected in 2017, taking office in 2018, there were a lot of issues to deal with. But in 2020, the immigration issue really came into focus. And here's what happened. There was an undocumented person who was before the judge of the Court of Common Pleas in Northampton County. And at the end of his hearing, he was told, "You are free to go." The judge said to this undocumented man, "You are free to go." His lawyer said to him as they're walking out of the courtroom, "You are free to go." The lawyer's name was Josh Fuller. He has since passed. However, when they were leaving the courtroom, unbeknownst to them, an armed, remember this is 2020, this is Trump's first term, an armed ICE agent was permitted to sneak in a back door of the courthouse in violation of county policy, and the arrest was made when this gentleman, who a judge said you're free to go, the arrest was made as he was walking out of the door. His lawyer, as any zealous advocate would, went nuts. And so we're in a crowded courthouse, in a crowded corridor, with an armed ICE agent, a lawyer who has just lost his mind because of the injustice that he perceives his client to being subjected to, and a dangerous situation created by that ICE agent was occurring. Fortunately, a sheriff's deputy with training in crisis intervention training was able to de-escalate the situation, and no violence occurred that day. But that day, I decided I was going to research the law. I was going to use the legitimate power of the government to push back against ICE in 2020. We researched the law to determine what our local government responsibility is with respect to the enforcement of immigration law and what it is not. Basically, we don't have any responsibility to help them out. So as soon as I learned that by doing the legal research, I issued an executive order banning ICE from making arrests in Northampton County Courthouse. And that order stands to this day. My successor, Tara Zarinsky, has said during her transition period, now that she's taken office in Northampton County, she's going to keep that executive order in force. So these are just some, 1 minute. So these are just some of the things that I would say in answer to your question, but you want to keep feeding people, I support that.
Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Mark Tinsley. I'm the controller of Lehigh County. Just to start with your question, yes, I would absolutely support that. You know, and one of the things that we can do as Congress people is bring back money. So one of the things I would like to do is be able to support it not just vocally, but monetarily. That would be one of the number one things that I believe is necessary. What I'd also like to say is, so my nephew is Hispanic. So American mother, Colombian father, and the father, you know, has struggled with addiction, and right now he is in hiding. So his son can't find him, doesn't know where he is, and one of the things that happens beyond food that you can't get to is you can't get to your AA meetings, right? So this man is struggling in this moment because he is unable to get to these events. One of the things that I have done, even as controller, is that I had a town hall recently, that invited many people in to learn about what was going on. What are the things that we can do locally? We ended up having about 100 people show up to that town hall. And one of the things that I liked in particular was I didn't know most of the faces. Right? When you go to these Democratic meetings or whatever meetings on a regular basis, you tend to get to learn the faces of the same people that come. This was not the same people. And so what I love about that is that the community is very interested in this information. And we were able to give them specific to-dos that they could go out and learn about. One of them was, to buy whistles, which, by the way, I brought them back. Please take some whistles. The second thing is, get involved with ERN. I think it's very important to donate to ERN, to become involved with ERN. Like anything that you can do to help our citizens in this area, I think is very important. So I think I answered your question. I know I could take up my whole time, but I'm gonna let Amy take some.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Aiden Gonzalez. I'm the vice president of Lehigh Valley. Sorry, I'm very soft-spoken. Forgive me. My name is Aiden Gonzalez. I am the vice president of the Lehigh Valley Young Democrats. Before I get into the question, I do want to thank you all for being here tonight. I know that it's a scary time, and I want to thank all of you especially who are coming up and telling your stories. This is how things change. So although it's a scary time, this is how things change, all right? So thank you all. The answer to your question simply is yes. I would publicly support your program. I have a reputation for, so my answer will be concise, but let me say that I find it sickening that in the wealthiest country in the world, there are people who are food insecure, period. It's frankly a travesty that there are people who can't leave their homes at this point in time in what is frankly the world's oldest democracy, right? Last year, the Department of Homeland Security got $190 billion. And as of yesterday, the funding bill seems like it's going to keep that amount roughly. It would be great if we could send some of that money to feeding people instead of locking them in their homes. Thank you. Yes, I would support the program.
Thank you, Aiden. You can hold on to the mic. We're going to invite up now Jose, member of the Cathedral, to ask the next question. Aiden, you will answer first, and then we'll kick it back.
Buenas tardes. I'm going to say in Spanish. That way someone can help the Spanish-speaking people, with the translation. Esta es una historia de la catedral. Yes.
This is a story about a member of the cathedral.
So, su nombre es Nelson. Vino de Nicaragua con un privilegio humanitario de parol.
His name is Nelson. He came from Nicaragua with a parole from a couple of years ago.
Eso fue del año 23.
In 2023.
So, el único compromiso que tuvo con ICE fue de reportarse a Filadelfia.
So his only commitment with ICE was to report to Philly.
Todo el tiempo fue Nelson a reportarse.
During the time since he got here, he would report every time he needed to do it.
Octubre 15 fue su último reporte.
October 15th was the last time he went to Philly to report himself.
So, Nelson sigue en Shannon County Prison o Processing Center en Clearfield, Pennsylvania.
At this moment, Nelson is at the detention center in Shannon.
Shannon. Entonces, recientemente me he comunicado con su abogado y el abogado me ha dicho que el gobierno tiene una postura de proveer asilo si las personas hacen lo correcto.
I talked to his lawyer recently, and the lawyer informed me that the government currently has a position to provide asylum if the person behaves correctly.
Lo que ellos están diciendo es que si eres de Nicaragua, tienes que pedir asilo a Honduras primero, y si no te da Honduras, a El Salvador, y si no te da El Salvador, a Guatemala,
And then they're
después a
saying
México.
that if you want asylum, if you're from Nicaragua, you have to ask Honduras first. If Honduras doesn't provide asylum, then you have to ask El Salvador for asylum. If you're from El Salvador, so on and so on.
So, esa es la nueva postura o la interpretación de la ley que ha dado este nuevo gobierno.
And that's the position this government is proposing.
Todos hemos visto cómo ICE ha dañado, matado a inmigrantes y también a los mismos ciudadanos americanos.
We've all seen how ICE has damaged, hurt, killed immigrants and even citizens of this country.
Hemos visto tanto abuso, no hay un proceso como era antes.
We've all seen the abuse. There's no process, at least how it was a couple of years ago.
He conocido que los jueces nuevos son como puestos por la administración sin tener quizá los credenciales.
And I've heard or probably known of judges that are just placed by the current administration without having the necessary credentials to be in those positions.
Y entonces las cosas están como quien dice en el aire, hay mucha incertidumbre.
And so things
y hay
feel
mucho
up in
miedo.
the air and there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fear.
La pregunta para ustedes que están como postulándose para servir en cualquier categoría de la siguiente administración,
The question for you that are running for a position,
si fueran elegidos, ¿qué harían por sus ciudadanos, por los inmigrantes y qué mensaje le mandarían a ICE ahora mismo?
if you were elected, what would you do for your constituents, for the immigrants, and what message would you send right now to ICE?
Gracias.
Thank you.
Y gracias por su pregunta también, señor. It's a great question. I think the scariest part of this is that we don't know the extent of what's happening, right? So we all see the news reports every day of this U.S. citizen was mistakenly deported. This individual was treated extraordinarily poorly. One that caught my attention recently, right, is the Vietnamese man. Mong, thank you. And so the scariest part of that is that we don't know what else is happening. We only know the things that are on video, that are in the news. And so part of running for Congress is being in favor of congressional oversight. ICE is running just rampant without any sort of oversight at all. The funding bill that I mentioned just now, there's no further oversight on DHS, on ICE. It's just, here's more money without any type of accountability. And in a republic, checks and balances aren't something that you can abdicate. It's not a prerogative that you can give away. It's a responsibility. And the failure to do that is eroding the fabric of the country and of the government. And so my message to ICE is that if I'm elected to Congress, you are accountable to the people of this country through the vehicle of the United States Congress. And that includes withholding funding. That includes taking what is now ICE and turning it back into the INS and sending it back to the Department of Justice and the Department of Labor, where it belongs. So thank you for your question. I appreciate being able to address that. And that's my answer.
Yeah, so let me be clear about what I would tell ICE. We're going to defund them. There will be no ICE. There will be no detention centers. They all have to go. That's it. Like, as many of you know, I am Jewish. I know what ICE is. Do you guys know what ICE is?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There is no reason to have ICE. That completely has to go, and we have to look at the detention centers as if it was Germany. We have to look at ICE as if they're the SS. We cannot stand here and let this happen to our people. I am sorry. So, one of the things that I wanted to mention today is, like many of you when you came in, a bunch of you had asked me about a comment that Ron Meitler made. So some of you may or may not know, but yesterday I had a press conference where we found that ICE was in our buildings, and I asked the administration to kick them out. And the administration did kick them out. I believe Josh Siegel is here. I'd like to give him a high five if I could. And so one of the things that has come up is that Ron Meitler, who is a commissioner, has put out a statement saying that no, it wasn't ICE, it was HSI. So let me be clear about what the difference between HSI and ICE is. First, we got the contract, Ron Meitler did not get the contract. It was very clear that ICE was signing the contract. Number two, HSI is ICE. HSI equals ICE. HSI is the division that does the investigation. You can think of them as the sleuth, right? So when ICE wants to deport people and they want to find a good, workplace to go raid, guess who does that? HSI. One of the things that was said was that HSI isn't doing that, all they're doing is sex trafficking. I hope they are doing some sex trafficking. That would be great. Let me tell you, who are 77% of the people that are sex trafficked?
Administration.
Immigrants. Immigrants. 77% of those that are sex trafficked are immigrants. Right? So who are they helping? These people can't come forward. Right? They can't do anything because if HSI shows up, what are they gonna? They're gonna be taken. And the administration on day one, when he came in, he signed an executive order, and that executive order said, what comes first? What comes first? Deportation. Deportation. And you know one of the largest groups that's helping do that? HSI and ICE. It is very clear what's happening. We have evicted ICE. Thank you.
So my interaction with ICE is not theoretical. Last year, the leadership from ICE, headquartered in Philadelphia, drove up the turnpike to knock on my door. They all came into my office, and they all sat down, which was clearly an effort to intimidate me, right? They sat down and they said, your executive order is not lawful, it makes no sense, and we want you to rescind it. And I looked at them, and I said, no. They said, we don't understand you. And I said, I understand the Constitution of the United States of America in Pennsylvania. I understand that. And I did my homework. You can't make me do it. They said, but we don't understand what you're doing. And I said, you can read. The executive order is very clear. And they said, but we don't like it. And I said, that's too bad. And then I said this, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know, like 6 of them or something. I said, if my executive order was illegal, you would have already taken me to court. And you would have beaten me in court. But it's not. Because I know if you take me to court, I'm going to beat you. ICE got up, they left. That executive order is still in place. And that's what you do when you're confronted by ICE. Eye to eye, you look them in the eye, and you make sure that you're right on the law. This is a point I want to make, folks. We're running to be lawmakers, right? That's what we're running to do. And we need to use the law that is available to us, as I did in this circumstance, and the legitimate power of the government that we already have in our possession to make sure the rights of everyone are not violated. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those answers. We have one more story and question from a member of our network, and then invite Elizabeth up here. You can come to the front.
Hi everybody, I'm Elizabeth. On June 24th of 2025, me and my husband were attending a court proceeding for ARD, the accelerated disability. And at the end of that court date, the judge had told us to exit the courtroom to do the final payment process. And as we were leaving, our lawyer at that time had told us to wait outside the courtroom for him because he had to leave to make a phone call for some reason. As he left, a sheriff's deputy approached us and said that Darwin would be going with him. And as he said that, they opened the door, sheriff's deputy opened the door for 2 ICE agents to come out. And they were not wearing anything describing that they were ICE. I didn't see any badges, I didn't see a warrant either. Since Darwin has been detained, it's been 7 months. It's been extremely hard. With the lack of support from him, I'm behind on rent. I get help with groceries because I honestly can't afford it, and I have 2 jobs. I'm a waitress, and I still can't support myself. And right now, we have a court date on Monday, and first of all, the last court date that he had, he should have been let go. But whenever he was supposed to leave the building, ICE had served him a paper. Literally at 5:30, I got there at 5. And they served him a paper saying that they were re-detaining him. So he never even left the premise. He never had a chance. For people who are being illegally detained and people who are being mistreated in the facilities, I want to know, and I want to guarantee that something is going to happen for them. If not for Darwin, for the people after him. Because this is ridiculous, the amount of people who are actually being held, who have their papers, who have work permits and everything, and are allowed to be here, but cannot get through that process because they're just stopped at the first step, and then they're stuck. And while they're in the detention center, they're still making money because it's a private business, that you know. So I need to know that people who are being illegally detained will be coming home. That's fine.
And where is he then?
He's in Pike County.
Thank you. sharing that story with us. Thank you. This is one of the problems with the law as it's currently written. ICE takes the position, the federal government takes the position that they do not need a warrant to detain a person who is in this country without documents. They are using a provision of, so there's two provisions in the immigration law. There's civil enforcement and criminal enforcement. And what ICE does is they call everything civil enforcement. And they do that because then they don't have to go to a federal district court to get a warrant for the detention of the undocumented person. That's what they're doing. That is the game that they are playing. My position is, specifically with someone who is detained, so that's someone who lawfully can't leave, right? If you want that person, you need to get a warrant. I don't care if you're playing the game, I'm going on the civil track. No, you're not going on the civil track. You're putting someone in chains. That person has a right to have your allegations reviewed by a judge, a federal district court judge, or a federal magistrate as to whether you should be detained at all. Everyone in this country has that right, has the right to have the charges against them reviewed by a court of competent jurisdiction. And in this case, it would be a federal district court. I says, oh no, we don't have to do that. So, one of the things, remember, we want to be lawmakers, right? We want to use the proper power of the government. I want to go and change the law. I don't want to give them the civil remedy anymore. All the remedies must be criminal so that we can enforce and insist that due process is given to everyone who's taken into custody. Look, it's not a lawsuit. I used to be a lawyer, okay? I still am a lawyer, but I practiced it full time for a long time. Civil law, I represented mostly former steelworkers in asbestos cases. Nobody ever ended up in handcuffs after our case was over. That's what a civil lawsuit is. If somebody's being detained against their will, that's criminal, and the Constitution of the United States of America and Pennsylvania should protect you.
So I am not a lawyer, but I do know how to read. You know, and so, you know, the law that he is talking about is called the INA, right? So it is the Immigration Nationalities Act. We need to throw it on the ground and light it on fire. It is a useless document. Basically what ends up happening is each administration gets to change the law the way they want to interpret it. That's why Biden was able to do whatever he did, and that Trump was able to do whatever he wants to do, and Obama was able to do whatever they want to do. Because the law, as it's written, is trash. There was a law that was being created while Biden was in office that Republicans had agreed to, and what happened? Trump. He threw that one in the trash. When we get in, we will write that one. I will work across the aisle because I really do believe that there are people across the aisle that care about this. They have family members as well that are being detained, that are going to the detention centers that shouldn't even exist. But one of the other parts of the question that I really want to take a moment for really is, so how are we going to keep these guys accountable later? Right? And so yesterday, when I did make the announcement about about evicting ICE, I like to say deporting, but was that I asked the county to create a database. And that database would be something where the public could actually store this information. Right, so you're out there, you're taking video, like we're doing all the right things. We need to capture the names of the ICE agents. That needs to be kept in a database. Like if it may not be unlawful now, well in the future, when Congress changes, we need to be able to go after these guys.
Yes.
And they need to know that we're coming. So what I would do is I will work with Lehigh County, I will work with Northampton County, I will work with Harmon County. If I can bring funding back to make sure that we can fund this database, I will make sure that we do that. We will find a way to make sure that the people that are being hurt right now by, people that hurt Miss Good, that killed Miss Good, that they are held accountable. That is what I will do.
I also want to thank you for your courage in sharing your story to ask that question. It's very tough to be able to share something that personal about yourself in front of this many people. So thank you for that. There's a lot of different aspects to this question. The first, of course, is one that I think might have been overlooked, and that is, what will we do for these people who are being illegally detained? And just like anybody else who breaks the law to do these things, there are damages. And it's heartbreaking to hear that you're having trouble with everyday things like paying your rent or getting groceries. They owe you that money, and you're entitled to it, you're gonna get it. The other thing is, what do we do about holding ICE accountable? We don't have to change the law. It's already illegal. What they're doing is breaking the law. They're breaking the law, federal law, they're breaking state law. They're in violation of the Constitution. They have been ordered by federal judges to stop doing what they're doing. They haven't stopped. So, yes, there needs to be accountability. There needs to be reparations made to the individuals who have been harmed by this. But I do disagree that we should force all of these into a criminal group. In fact, this is when things got a lot worse in 2003, when INS became ICE and was reorganized into DHS. They started counting all of these things as aggravated felonies so that they could pursue these people coming to the U.S. criminally. Really, we need a robust civil mechanism for this sort of thing. And as Lamont said, that does not involve putting you in handcuffs. That does not involve illegally detaining you before anyone can adjudicate whether what ICE is accusing you of is actually true. And in many cases, it isn't. So there's a two-part answer there. There's what are we going to do for the people who are harmed, but there's also what are we going to do to hold these folks accountable. And I've already alluded to my plan for that, which is to put them back where they belong. Immigration law is an important aspect of the country. It is not this. This is not immigration law. No other country in the world does things like this. And in our history as a country, we've never killed American citizens in the street. We've never treated human beings this way. That's fair. That's fair. Let me clarify that remark. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's important that you keep your lawmakers accountable too. We have never treated individuals in immigration law like this. We have never circumvented the law to do these things. And so, again, I go back to my answer of accountability and congressional oversight. This is what's been advocated, and this is what needs to come out. Thank you.
So when we were planning this town hall, get the mic's working, okay. When we were planning the town hall, we wanted to center the work of the ERN, which is why we chose these 3 questions. I think they speak to a lot of the work of rapid response, which is involved mostly, our work has been supporting and fighting the impacts of these deportations. So I just want to give another thanks to Elizabeth and Barbara for asking those questions and speaking to, and also for your work in our network in any way that you support it. So just a round of applause for those questions. Okay, I have here some of the selected questions that were submitted or brought in today. So It's gonna be like a little bit of a raffle. So your lucky winner gets to come up here in front of everyone and ask a question. So the first number, so I'm gonna read out the number. If you're not in the room, I will ask the question myself. But the first number is 175061. 061. And I will give you, you submit, you can self and ask it.
My name is Daniel Carapezzi. I'm a local political activist, and I work full-time as a student aide back in Phillipsburg, in the middle school there. And I've been paying attention, obviously, to ISIS terror regime in this country for as long as it's been, taking place, especially in the last, 6 years or so. And I've kind of come to feel that, when I do bus duty in the afternoon and I take some of these kids home, and I know that some of them are immigrants, I'm starting to very realistically worry that, when we drop them off, there's a possibility that there's going to be ICE agents taking their, family member away in situations like that. So when it comes to the subject of ICE, as an institution, it was only formed in 2003. I mean, I'm older than that. I'm 28 years old. I'm a lot older than that. And in terms of the histories of agencies and institutions of government, that is very young. And since otherwise we've constantly seen public support services being done away with, either completely gutted and shut down or defunded, do you have any argument against the complete abolition of ICE and the redirection of all its funds? And if so, why do you think we need it? Or any iteration of it?
Just a reminder, we'll do 2 minutes for these.
Thank you for your question. I would go further than getting rid of ICE. I think that the entirety of DHS is a complete waste of money. It was made as a knee-jerk reaction to 9/11. Subsequent commissions have found that we had all of the information that we needed to prevent that, except that the intelligence community didn't share it amongst each other. So we created the Department of the Director of National Intelligence to address that. So last year, it was a $190 billion boondoggle. All of the components of DHS that need to remain should go back to where they were originally. This now includes things like the Coast Guard. However, parts of INS are not necessarily to arrest and detain people. They are to facilitate the process to become an American citizen. They're to facilitate the process of coming here to work, to get an education, to have an opportunity. Those are the parts I would keep. Good common sense parts of immigration law. I would not continue to fund things like ICE, where we're running around, killing people in the streets, locking people up illegally.
I think we're going to agree pretty much here. Yeah, I believe we should get rid of DHS as well. There is no reason for this organization. And, I was actually there, I watched the towers fall. One of the things that I would say is that the one good thing that happened was that at the top, there's now somebody that coordinates between the different agencies. Good, like that. I think that person can exist without DHS. In terms of do we need ICE? I don't think we need ICE at all. The way I would start would be throwing the current law on the ground, putting it on fire, starting over, and then let's together build what we think we need in order to welcome people into this country, and whatever we need for border security that people, that keeps people safe, whatever that looks like. That is what I would do.
Thank you. I don't support the abolition of the Department of Homeland Security, and here's why. I mean, since those devastating terror attacks of September 11th, countless terror plots have been disrupted here in the homeland. So I wouldn't support the abolition of DHS. I'll get there. With respect to the question at hand, we need border security. and we need interior enforcement. But what we don't need is a masked paramilitary organization, running around scooping up folks without any due process whatsoever. So first thing I do is, remember, I want to be a lawmaker, I want to write laws, that's what I want to do. I'm going to go there and write a law, and there's been many bills already drafted, debated, to get their masks off their faces, because no public servant should ever be masked. But with respect to the notion that there shouldn't be any interior enforcement of immigration law at all, no, I don't agree.
All right, thank you for that question. Next up is going to be 052. 17552. Lucky winner. 052. The last three digits is 052. Going once? Okay. I'm just going to read this question. She's going to use them. What are your plans, ideas, or goals for keeping all citizens in our congressional district safe from the physical and emotional intrusion of ICE personnel?
The question is interesting in that it talks about citizenship. I think everyone who's in the United States is subject to the Constitution of the United States of America and subject to the Constitution of Pennsylvania, which, by the way, in many instances gives greater protection to the individual than does the Constitution of the United States. So, the first thing I'll be doing is rhetorically insisting upon, whether it be in committee meetings or in the well of the House of Representatives, insisting upon that the Constitution is respected, that due process is given to people who we seek to arrest. I mean, this is what these things are, they're arrests. So that's what I would be doing. And this stuff matters. What you say matters, what you do. I believe Mackenzie's first appearance in the well of the House of Representatives was to speaking to the country for the first time, was to attack me for my executive order in Northampton County. Am I out of time? Okay, so I will be in the well of the House of Representatives fighting to make sure the Constitution applies to everyone who's here.
So I think you guys know how I feel about ICE. So I think we're going to get rid of that. But the question was also emotional, right? Like how to handle this. So one of the things that I really do believe, like I work for the county. I believe in the county. I think that we should be working with the counties. The counties do have mental health services. We need to support their mental health services through the federal government even more, so that we can help not just them but anybody that is that has mental health issues. So I really do believe that the federal government, in this case me, of course, should be working with the counties, bringing money back, helping them organize, all of those things. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's pretty near the mark, right? It's working with your local partners in the district, but it's a little bit more that you can do as well. There's constituent services so that you can keep track of these individuals who have been illegally detained, who are owed damages for the experiences that, mark my words, in 5 years, we're gonna be here, we're gonna be experiencing some class action cases for this. So keeping track of that, making sure that these people are not forgotten. That hey, we're coming back to deal with this. That's what I'll say.
Great. Okay. Next up is 058. 058. Last three numbers. Last call for 058. I feel like I'm in a bingo hall right now. So some of these questions were submitted by registrants who may not have actually come here today. So with the recent events in Bethlehem and Easton, with increased ICE presence. Please tell me what can and will you do to prevent further expansion into the Lehigh Valley, or into this congressional district?
Yeah, there's a number of facilities that are being planned all over the country, over and above what already exists. Many of these are in violation of zoning laws, and they are being maintained in violation of statutes that allow your elected representatives to tour them, to make sure that the things that are happening are not happening. There's probably a reason for that. And I've harped on congressional oversight again and again. I would be very active in making sure that the law is being followed in any facility that is operating in the Lehigh Valley. That does include the new one that's being built in the suburbs of Philly. We've said over and again, all three of us up here, these things should not be happening. They're illegal. And Congress has all but advocated their responsibility to ensure that citizens, but all people in the United States, are being treated equitably and fairly.
Yeah, so first off, you guys know that we evicted ICE, right? That's where we start. There are other things that we can do as well, right? So one of the things that I happen to believe is that every county that there is in this moment does not need to allow ICE to come into the courtrooms, right? So even if they're allowed in the front door because it's a public space, right? We don't have to let them in through the back door. We don't have to let them carry guns. We don't have to let them just take information without us stopping them. There's a lot of ways that we can slow down what ICE is doing. Also, I will not sign an appropriation bill in which ICE is included. That is one way of stopping what is happening with ICE.
That was a question again. About
what can you do to prevent the expansion of ICE into the Lehigh Valley?
right. That is a great question, and it's something that I have been dealing with since 2020. After I initially banned them from making arrests in the courthouse, and part of the justification for that was there's a lot of research that suggests that enhanced immigration enforcement makes us less safe. It actually increases crime. So that was one of the data-driven justifications I had for doing that. But, they freaked out after I did that in 2020. I even got a couple of death threats. So this was not a inconsequential decision. And since then, there have been some high-profile raids in the Lehigh Valley, but there hasn't been the kind of thing you see in Minneapolis. And it is a balancing act to prevent that from happening. Maybe some people want to see that happen here, but I do not want to see that happen here. So we will need to make sure that we continue to balance these interests so we don't see it happen here.
All right, 056. Here we go.
Two away twice. My name is Reverend Steve Davis. I'm the senior pastor at St. John's United Church of Christ in Fullerton in the Whitehall area. And my question is, what will you do specifically? I want to know specifically, what will you do to ensure that the rule of law and the accountability is held for the president to follow the law and for Congress to be the one that checks unbridled power?
We have to change the law. We have to eliminate their ability to pretend like this is a civil proceeding. We have to eliminate their ability for them to pretend like they do not owe a person who's subject to arrest the due process of law, that they don't have to go to a federal district court judge and make the case to that judge with a warrant why it is they should be able to detain that person. So we have to change the law. I mean, we can I'm sorry?
That's one.
Yeah, what else you got?
So what do you do to hold them accountable for that? They're
So-
doing it anyway. What would you do to make sure they can't?
Well, you have to first change the law. I mean, that's what you have to do. You can't let them hide behind that. That's my answer to your question.
Yeah, so we are in a tough position here, right? Because the president has to sign off on any new law that we would create. So that seems like a problem. But I think that, to your point, there needs to be something that we can do. So, like what we have to do first off is we have to take the Senate. Right? And then eventually we gotta take the presidency. Right? And then when that happens, because the president has been given absolute immunity, we will not be able to hold him accountable for most of this stuff that he's doing. Right? And so, what I believe, we are going to have to expand the Supreme Court. We are going to have to take these laws back all the way up to a more progressive, shall I say, moderate, anything, Supreme Court, so that we can hold these people accountable. And as I mentioned before, I do think that we should be creating a database. I think every county should be creating a database of what is going on so that we can identify who it is and we can hold them accountable. Like this current administration is using, immunity. Qualified immunity, thank you. Is using qualified immunity to protect their agents. The next administration may not do that. And so we can go after these people when they get out or when Trump is no longer here.
Well, at this point, we've said over and over again that what's going on is illegal. So I don't think that there's anything stopping us from prosecuting the individuals who have committed infractions against federal and state law. I'll go one farther for you, though, and say that I think that the people heading these agencies should be held accountable as well. That's where the buck stops, right? That's who's issuing these orders, and that's who needs to stand trial as well. So I have a long memory, is what I'm saying. And I'm keeping a tally of everything that I see that is in violation of the Constitution, federal law, and state law. And these people will have their day in court, I assure you. But yeah, we can certainly pass new laws. I think that's a good idea to stay out of courtrooms, stay out of school campuses. These things are directly within the purview of Congress because these things are directly interrupting economic activity. That's Article 1. There's no reason that children should be afraid to go to school. There's no reason that their parents should be afraid to pick them up. So that's my answer for holding folks accountable.
Next up is 064. 064.
What opportunities do you see for our region to show leadership nationally as a welcoming community for immigrant families and all vulnerable residents of the region? What I'm looking for is specifically the Lehigh Valley. What opportunities do you see for us to show leadership at a national level?
That's a great question, and I like that you used the word opportunity. It's probably the most optimistic thing that we've spoken about so far tonight. Your question is at a national level, but I don't want to take away from what we're doing here tonight. Not only is our population more than 11% Hispanic, it's a very welcoming community, but we have simultaneous translation going on in Spanish in this room right now. So it starts here in making this a welcoming community for all of the members of the community. But I think that raising these things on the national stage is also equally important. There are lots of different initiatives in Congress for funding things like Hispanic heritage, or funding things like placing immigrants in jobs in local communities. And I'm extremely supportive of those. I think that that's really what makes America great, right? We're a nation of immigrants, regardless of how many generations you've been here. And we shouldn't shut the door to them. These are our friends, our neighbors. That's what makes America great, not kidnapping people off of the streets.
So you guys may have noticed, like, I really believe in our county government. And I think our county government is what we need to work with. Like federally, we need to work with our counties. And I think, especially under the Trump regime, we have seen more and more federalism, right? So who is becoming more important are the local governments. It's our municipalities and it is our county governments. And so what I think we should be doing, and some of you may not believe this, we don't necessarily need national headlines for it, but we could have them, is that we should be working very closely with the counties. Like, we should be focused on the counties and figuring out what they need in order to be more welcoming so that we're helping everyone. Because it might be translation services, it might be mental health services, it might be finding a home, it might be affordable housing, right? There's a lot of things that will make this community more welcoming to people. And I happen to believe, we have got to stop corporate control of everything. I think about the housing and what's going on right here. How can we be welcoming if you can't afford to live? Right? So that's why I focus on that.
Thank you very much. I think the one thing that we need to do, it's a theme that I have been leaning on all night. We have available to us a magnificent Constitution that gives us the right to peaceably assemble. And you have been seeing Trump and his various atrocities being protested outside Mackenzie's offices over by Dorton Park, outside Mackenzie's offices on Emerald Boulevard. I've been to some of them myself. That is the kind of thing we can do. There is a lot of, I hate to sound professor, sorry to any professors who are in the audience. I'm sure there's one or two. But the people who have studied, the academics and other researchers who have studied this have found that autocratic regimes fall when a certain percentage is hit in the population who is peaceably assembling and protesting. And I really, when I go to these Mondays with Mackenzie, people say to me, what can I do? I said, you're doing it right now, and you need to keep doing it. And that will be, I'm almost out of time. But that's my answer to your question.
You got it next. Next up, 055.
My name is Jen Schwartz. I work as an outreach director for a nonprofit, and my question is focused on childcare. An estimated 1 in 5 early childhood educators are immigrants. And now that early learning settings, childcare settings are fair game, prior to Trump's second term, they were protected under a Sensitive Locations Act. And children and families are afraid to go to these care settings. What would you do to change this?
I would ban enforcement at schools of all kinds, irrespective of how you define school, Head Start, preschools, other early childhood learning centers. I would absolutely ban any immigration enforcement at schools and in churches.
Okay, so you guys remember the INA, right? That's the law that controls all of this. What do we need to do with it? That is what I would do. And we would start over, and we would take care of issues like that. There's no reason that that should be happening. And what did she just say? It changed from one administration to the next. That is the problem that we have. If Congress did its job, we wouldn't be in this place. I will do my job. That is what I will do. And I will make sure that we do everything that we need to do. Now, let's also be clear, you know, we're all up here to write laws, right? But it's gonna be difficult to get anything passed. So we need to be able to do things as individuals as well, right? And so if I need to show up somewhere to make sure that things like this are captured and so that they're seen by the public, I will be there. That is what I will do.
So I already alluded in my answer to the last question that I also would ban these types of operations from happening in schools. One of the things that struck me about your statistic is that 1 in 5 children also live in poverty. And so we're compounding the problem by hurting the most vulnerable segments of our population. And it's pretty amazing how often reality tends to have a left-leaning bias. So cracking down on things like that, protecting the most vulnerable segments of our population is really important. These things like separating parents from their children also contribute to this and also should be illegal. We can't be, as I said, the nation of immigrants, the greatest country on earth, right? If we're doing things like this. It's not just inhuman, it's un-American. This is not who we are. So I would ban both of those things.
We have 3 more questions here. 050.
Hi, my name is Susan Schessler, and I'm a resident of Heritage Village in Nazareth. I was wishing that Ryan McKenzie was here because I would ask him, how do you square morality with the actions of the government and the president? I'm a part of the group who forms on Denver Boulevard, and also I organize 35 people in our Heritage Village who are in their 70s and 80s to use the 5 calls method. We have done that for about months and months and months. The last few months we've stopped because we're kind of pooped with it. We don't get responses. But we wholeheartedly agree that the responses of the public are absolutely critical. And the more public demonstrations we have, the better. And if we can do it in our 80s, every single one of you here can do it.
Just kind of expound on the role of morality as a congressperson in your work.
Thank you for your work. I don't know how I can improve on that. That's a mic drop moment. Well, I think it's pretty obvious why our esteemed representative isn't here. You know, with some people, if they didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have standards at all. And all 3 of us have talked about what it means to be American and what it means to have a constitution that treats everyone fairly, that protects things like due process. And these are the things that we need to bring back. It's worse than after 2020, right? There's no
we're going back to how things were. But we can bring back the things that make us proudly American. The First Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, 14th Amendment. These are the things that define us as Americans. These are the things that have always defined us as Americans. These are the things that are in the Pennsylvania Constitution that predate the U.S. Constitution. And if you seek elected office and you don't believe those things, I don't know what to tell you. That doesn't represent the Lehigh Valley. It doesn't represent any district in America.
Yeah, well, I definitely cannot speak to Ryan's morality by any stretch. But let me tell you the sort of how I think, because morality means a lot of different things to different people. So let me actually just focus on sort of my philosophy, how I think about things. There's a philosophy called the veil of ignorance. Some of you know it? Yeah. So, basically the way to think about this is that, you're in your mother's womb, and you don't know anything about who you are. You don't know anything about your parents. You don't know what their color is. You don't know if you have all of your limbs. You don't know how much money they have. You don't know anything. And what is the world that you want to be born into? You get to create the world. And that is how I think about things. That is how I think about Congress. What are the things that we can do to make a better world? That's how I think about things.
Sadly, in answer to your specific question about how can Congressman McKenzie defend the morality and the actions of the Trump administration, frankly, I don't think it ever comes into his calculus. Ryan McKenzie is simply a tool of the corporations. Whatever the corporations want, the people who gave him the money to be in Congress and who are giving him the money to try and stay there, Ryan McKenzie will do. Does not care about the morality of a particular issue. He may talk about morals once in a while when they think it may benefit them politically. But the fact of the matter is, he is a corporate tool, and he will do whatever the corporations who he works for want him to do.
Two more, 051. 051.
My name is Stephen Martin, and unfortunately we already covered a lot of this question, but I'd like to ask, what steps, if any, as a private citizen, have you taken to oppose this?
So I can't, Stephen, thank you for the question. I can't separate my personal actions from my professional actions, and what I can tell you is I've done the things that I did tonight. I stopped a private immigration prison from coming to the Lehigh Valley. I kicked ICE out of the courthouse in 2020, and they haven't been back in to be able to make arrests. I have an executive order that requires them to go to a federal judge or a federal magistrate to get a warrant if they want someone handed over to them by me in chains. That's what I've done.
Yeah, so maybe in the same situation, it's hard to separate, personal from elected office. But, so I held a town hall where we educated people. I've been out, at Ryan McKenzie's and, Mondays with McKenzie. He and I do not hang out. I have definitely gone protesting. And recently, as I mentioned, we just kicked them out of Lehigh County. Right? So these are the things that we can do. We can leverage the power that we have. We just have to use all of the levers.
Yeah, I'm doing it. This is one of the primary reasons I got into this race. So many of you are thinking, why did he get in so late? Seeing these news stories, so that I can come here and talk to all of you, and then we can have this conversation, and we can decide what to do next. This is what it's about.
Zero 60.
now brown and black and undocumented, family, friends, neighbors safe from the abuses of ICE when, not if, they descend upon the Lehigh Valley. I realize they've been here, but my fear, and I think a lot of people's fear, is that they're going to, really come here and huge.
Yeah, that's a great question. And we've talked a lot about what we will do when one of us is elected. But there's a more immediate concern that comes before November, and that's the safety of all of us in this room. So I would encourage you, and I know that the cathedral does, and ERN do a lot of work with other local community groups as well. And I encourage you to go and find a group near you, get acquainted with them, mobilize. And I also want to give a plug for Mark tonight, who brought whistles, and they're in the back, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, so get those. I mean, this is how we respond as a community. This is how we keep each other safe.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I definitely agree. You need to join the ERN. Okay? And if you can't join, donate. And I know we're always asking people to donate, but I'm a politician and I'm not asking for a bid. So, growing up, as I mentioned, I was Jewish, so in synagogue, one of the questions you get asked is, if Anne Frank came to your door, would you invite her in? Right? And so if you're not willing to join ERN or something like that, you know your answer. We are not in a position where we are going to be killed, we hope, if we help someone. So, help someone. And there was the first one, Barbara, I think, who needed help with the food. Donate food. Right there are things that we can do. Thank you.
So, there was a majority leader in the United States Senate long ago named Mike Mansfield. And he was from one of the Dakotas, I think South Dakota. Was it Montana? Was Mansfield from Montana? Thank you for the correction. Montana. And he said that you don't question another senator's motivations. You can differ with them when you're arguing, but don't question the motivation behind that. And President Biden has talked about that a lot through the years. Yeah, President Biden actually served with Mansfield in the Senate. But what I want to say tonight is, this is the most important issue domestically that's raging in the country right now. There's no other issue. A protester was just killed in the street. There is no more important issue in the country right now than this issue. So I want to thank Mark Pinsley and Ada Gonzalez for coming here. We didn't agree about everything. You don't agree with everything I said. But I want to thank them for being here and being present and standing here and answering your tough questions. They weren't afraid to. They shared their perspectives with you. And so I'm really appreciative of being here with you guys tonight.
And I want to extend the gratitude to all three of you for being here. We can put the cards down. So just so you're aware, there were about 200 chairs in the room here, so to give you a sense of how many people came in. And I want you to raise your hand if you've been to an ERN training or been involved with the ERN so far. It's about half the room. Just as a sort of a plug, we do have a training coming up next Friday, January 30th. Everyone is invited to become trained. It's one thing to have a whistle, it's another thing to know how you're going to show up in community. Yeah, it works. All right, we'll learn it. But it's another thing to know how to show up in community, keep each other safe. We're going to have some volunteers with QR codes circulating at the end or as you go out if you want to sign up for that training. The last thing that we wanted to do here was read a statement from one of our volunteers in the Rapid Response Network, who had, I think, a great thought that kind of sums up where we stand. So, they write, I was thinking about what we were looking for in our representatives, and the answer is quite simple. All we are asking you to have is 3 bones. Back in 2016, as part of Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign, former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner shared her grandmother's wisdom with voters. Nina said that when she asked her grandmother what was needed to be successful in life, her grandmother said, all you need are 3 bones. The wishbone, the jawbone, and the backbone. She said the wishbone will keep you hoping and praying because hope is the motivator, but the dream is the driver. The reason why we do what we do today is because we hope and believe tomorrow will be a better day. The jawbone gives you courage to speak truth to power, to lift your voice. But the most important bone of them all is the backbone, because it will keep us standing through all of our trials and tribulations. And in this life, we will go through some stuff, but you can't have testimony without a test. And we are going to be tested whether or not we have the courage and conviction enough to do what we know in our heart is right. Even when other folks are standing on the sidelines, whether or not we have the courage enough to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I'll speak for myself and for many when I say this. We will no longer fight for those who don't fight for us. We will no longer support those who won't support us. We have no time to waste on platitudes and empty promises. If you won't dream of and work for a better future with us, regardless of how impossible, how far it might seem for us now, this is not the place for you. If you won't use your voice to speak truth to power beside us, this is not the place for you. If you won't have a backbone to fight for what's right with us, this is not the place for you. And if you are not here to put it all on the line for the cause, to take the risks that it represents to move the fascists that run our government head on, this is not the place for you. And you better move aside and let someone who's willing to take that risk step up and meet this moment. But if you do, if you have our needs, our safety, and our well-being as your top priority, above profits, above the optics, above politics, you will wield the kind of power that those people in the White House will never have. A kind of power, the only kind of power that truly matters, that will bring true change. The only power that is worth having, the people's power. And we will have your backs. Remember this, if you are not on our side, you are in our way. And this movement will continue forward with, without, or, and in spite of you. Thank you all for being here.